Thank you all for being here. I'm Caroline Calloway. I am an external development consultant. So this is really my area of expertise, very much my passion. I have been in the external development world for about the last 8 years, and before that, I was a producer on game teams. I was at EA for about 9 years, and then Riot for 2.5 before going off and doing my own thing. And we'll do the rest of the intros here, but I real quickly just want to do a quick show of hands. How many of you all are developers with some external development experience? Okay, all right, awesome. And is anybody here a service provider or a studio who provides services to developers? Show of hands. Okay, awesome, thank you. All right, well, before we dive into some questions, let's do a quick round of intros. You want to start, Thomas?
Yeah, hello. I'm Thomas O'Connor, CEO of Play Everywhere. We're a co-development studio based here in Seattle and Yokohama, Japan. We're primarily engineering focused and console focused. I've been doing this about 8 years. And before that, I used to work at Nintendo, and Microsoft been doing console games, kind of shaped the growth of the studio over time. Yeah.
Hello, everybody. That's me up there. I used to be a consultant in a former life, and one day I got a call from Electronic Arts that said, all of our teams are doing stuff internally, and they really need to work with external partners. Can you come in and fix that? So I joined EA 14 years ago. I spent 7 years building an external development practice, launching a conference in Vancouver called XDS, then moved on to corporate strategy for 7 years. And then for the past 2 years, I've been leading Devoted Fusion. That's a freelance platform for any studio that needs to find freelance talent. We're trying to transform that space so you can find freelancers very quickly and easily.
Tough act to follow. I'm Lauren Freeman. I'm the head of creator feedback at Roblox. And I've spent probably the last just over 20 years, I started when I was 5 years old, working in technology, entertainment, and games at a variety of companies. EA, where I met Jason and Caroline, working on external dev. Kabam, I spent many years there, working as an external producer. LOL 6 Waves, for those of you who know social gaming. I was a game writer for a while and a talent agent before that. So just a kind of a breadth of experience across multiple aspects of the industry.
Hi, my name is Teresa Pudens, and I've been in the game industry for several decades. I have worked in esports and game QA, and now I work at an indie called Nimble, and what we do is really unique because we make our own games, but we also handle staffing. Thank you.
Started at 5, started at 8.
Yes, 7 for me.
7 over here. QA tester. EA hires QA testers quite young.
Yeah, we stay out of the
do,
sun,
actually.
no wrinkles.
So there's one more thing before I promise we will dive into questions and hear from all of these amazing panelists. But just before we dive in, I wanted to give just a little context for what we're going to be diving into today. So, a lot of people have external development experience, maybe from, 5, 10 years ago. And one of the things we hope to do today is to talk about how external development is today. It has evolved so much. Certainly in the time that I've been doing this, it has matured so much. It's very global. You can go and find really niche specialists if that's what you're looking for, or you can find a studio who, all they do is 3D art assets, and you can go to a studio like that for scaling your development, or you can go and find a co-development studio where you've got cross-discipline experts to really help you make features in your games or make a mode. There's so many opportunities in external development, and we're hoping today to talk a little bit about what those different approaches to XDev are, talk a little bit about lessons that we've learned, so hopefully you don't have to learn those same lessons the hard way. We'll talk a little bit about what it takes to really make XDev successful. And hopefully you will leave here with some knowledge that you didn't have before, and feel empowered to engage in external development. So my first question is about what XDev actually means. XDev can mean a lot of different things depending on the context. So Jason, I would love to hear from you about how you define external development and what are some of the main approaches that you see developers take.
So as I mentioned, I was in consulting before, working with outsourcing companies. And when I joined the games industry, I noticed that the work with the external companies is very different to traditional outsourcing. It's not in traditional outsourcing, you throw something over the fence, they catch it, they have their SLAs, and then they just work on fulfilling those SLAs. That doesn't work for game development. You can't just define something and throw it over the fence. So at EA, we push this new term called external development because it's really important to forge close partnerships with these companies you're working with. They see them as an extension to your team. So that's one, I think, critical difference, not to look at this as outsourcing, but to look at these partners as an extension of your team that you work closely with, you form relationships with, you build strong relationships over time, and then that's when you get the best out of your game. And then there's, it could be art, it could be engineering, co-dev, there's lots of flavors of this, but I think the most important thing is you look at it as this tight partnership with these companies.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jason. And Teresa, can you talk a little bit about your experience, especially on the staffing side of things, and how that is involved in external development?
Yes, so I have a lot of experience in the managed service side. There's a lot of terms that are used here and there, but managed service is a lot of people being managed, kind of throw it over the fence. But there still needs to be that really tight-knit communication to understand the work being done. The co-dev piece is not what we do at Nimble, but we do a lot of staff augmentation and creating teams where there's shared services. And that could be something like you have a compatibility lab or a multiplayer lab, and you're sending it to that specific place with some specific people that are shared across multiple projects. There's so much you can do as an indie with the flexibility that you have that these big companies may not be able to do. And so having the specialists show up and having that augmentation of staff is a big part of what we do.
Thanks for helping explain the different flavors. It can be kind of a lot to come into XDev and actually try to figure out what you need from it. So yeah, thanks. So I want to talk a little bit about where developers should start. So now that you have an idea of kind of the different types of external development, for developers who have never worked with external studios before, or maybe very little, what's the first step that they should take? How can small teams, especially, speaking to an audience of indie-focused studios, how can small teams set themselves up for success in external development before even starting to look for a partner? Lauren?
Sure, happy to take this one. Before I dive in, can I get a quick show of hands? How many folks in the audience are indies that are thinking about becoming an external dev partner themselves? Couple people. So most of y'all are curious about how to actually augment with external dev. Okay, so first, the elephant in the room, why is this lady from Roblox even here? Our creator community is in large part comprised of indie developers. Our game studios tend to be quite small, ranging from, on average, like 5 to 10 person teams. And we see a lot of partnering between, it's like indies partnering with indies. It's kind of cool. Our ecosystem tends to be like very collaborative. But we also have a lot of brand partners, a lot of IP holders coming to Roblox. And so we've, worked very closely with these small teams to help set them up for success when working with clients for the first time. And so that's kind of the context from which I'm coming from. Little plug for Roblox. We recently launched a license platform, and what this is it's IP holders like Netflix with Stranger Things, and we've got Lionsgate with Twilight and Kodansha, and actually even Sega just came to the platform, and other IP we're going to announce soon. What we're trying to do is make this whole part of the industry a bit more egalitarian, where our developers are able to bid for building games with those IP holders directly on the platform, and the rates, the revenue share is right there, and any dev who bids is going to get that same rate. So just wanted to mention that if you're interested in working with clients, we have an interesting new way to facilitate that on Roblox. But for those of you who are thinking about augmenting your team, which seems like most of you, I would take a first principles perspective on this. Really work your way backwards from what are you trying to accomplish in the first place? Are you trying to bring more capital into the company? Are you, crunched for capital and you really need to you don't want to hire people? Maybe you're working in an expensive market and scaling your team's not possible. So you want to look to lower cost markets where you can pay slightly less for wages to augment your team. Or maybe, that's not your goal at all. Maybe you've got a really, really awesome team of, creatives who are awesome game designers and creative directors, and you're able to produce, kind of the nuts and bolts of your game, but you're not able to scale art production. So you're really looking for a team that can do 3D art production at scale. But I really advise that you start with what is the problem that you're trying to solve, and don't get cognitively lazy here. Really, really dig deep and get detailed about what are you willing to pay and why, right? What kind of skills do you have internally that you're looking to augment? And this is a really important one, and it's one where I've seen people make missteps where they're like, okay, we're gonna, tie up with another team, but you don't think long and hard about the superpowers that your own team has. If you have an amazing, concept art team, you don't need to send that out of house, right? If you have an amazing game designer on staff, don't tie up with a co-dev partner who they live and breathe game design and that's really what they want to do. Tie up with a co-dev partner who can offer, the front-end UI work that is absent on your team. So really think long and hard about what you need, what problems you're trying to solve, and be as detailed as possible before you even start engaging with partners.
Thanks, Lauren. Thomas, you want to?
Yeah,
From your experience.
Let me try our best. So, we've worked with a lot of different partners over the last few years, have varying different ways of working together. Some that have worked really, really well. Some that have had a number of challenges that I'm sure we'll get to talk about later. But when you're looking to start, I'll second you should know your scope and you should know what your team is good at, so that when you're looking for partners, you're looking for partners who can provide support in the areas that you actually could use help in. But there's a lot of things that come around with, like, can they adapt to the way that you're working? If you have not just like, are you bringing in engineers, are you bringing in QA, are you bringing in an art, but will they work together with you in your Slack or your Discord or your Teams? Are they going to sort of demand their own way of doing production, or are they going to adapt to your way of doing production? Will they join your production rituals? Is it porting where you're just going to hand them, like you said, throw it over the fence and then they want to throw it back to you? Or are they going to be really co-development and they're actually going to be partners? I think the most important thing that we have found to be successful is when our partners understand what their core values are, and we know what our core values are, and if there's a good alignment there, then the partnership really thrives. And then you don't have to get super hung up on exactly like what specific contract structure is, what are the bullet points on every single deliverable. You're actually just working together for a shared goal, finishing the mission and having sort of the same finish line. Last point I would add also, just remembering that the team that you're working with, they're people. It's not like a machine that you put your game in, you're expecting it to come out and you're gonna get the art back, you're gonna get the co-dev back, the engineering work. These are people that you're working with, they can grow. You're usually hiring them because they have expertise, but maybe you're also hiring them because what you're asking them to do aligns with their long-term goals. And so they're really motivated. They're gonna have some missteps, just like some of your employees might have missteps. But if you have a good relationship, a good partnership, you're cultivating that, they're gonna grow, they're gonna do better on the next time. And then on the next time you need to work with somebody that hopefully will be the first team that you wanna talk to.
Caroline, can I say something real quick?
Yeah, totally.
So I was thinking, like, when you're starting and you have services that you're offering, a lot of the established companies that are looking for your services are using word of mouth between themselves and other developers to say, hey, I know these people, I would recommend them to you. And so going out and meeting people and face-to-face and showing them what you do is very, very important.
Really good addition. Thanks, Teresa. So I think we've already touched on some of the challenges that can come up when you are looking to do some work externally, but I'd love to dig into that a little bit more. So when teams, when developers are looking to leverage XDev for, let's say, the first time or very early on in doing external development, what are some of the most common mistakes you see teams make or service providers make? And what advice would you give to help avoid those pitfalls? Jason, you want to start?
Yeah, good question. I could probably speak for the next hour on the pitfalls when we launch this at EA, but I would say one of them is not doing your due diligence on these partners and understanding are they a fit and kind of what's the setup of these companies. And I'll give you a fun story. At EA, we traveled out to a lot of these developers to assess them. And one of the developers had listed all of these artists that they have, because we asked them in this question, how many artists do you have? We got there, and there were maybe, I don't know, 10, 11 people in the studio. We're like, where are the artists? I thought you had lots of artists. Oh, yeah, we have lots of artists. Well, are they in the drawers? Are they hiding under the carpet? Like, where are they? Oh, they were at the other studio. So we went to the other one, and there was like 4 or 5 people there. It's like, well, I thought you had like 60, 70 artists. Well, actually, we have this program with a prison. It's a low security prison, and they're training them. Their artists are there. We have the art directors internally. And I was like, well, it passes our security requirements, because that's great. We're not leaking the IP, but that would have been great to say in the due diligence. So that was kind of one of the shocker ones. And then I would say another pitfall is not understanding cultural differences with the partners that you're working with. Early on in The Sims, we started to work with a provider in China. And we just thought the team thought everybody knows about kind of American culture. So we created the creative brief and said, right, we need some houses in a suburban neighborhood with a garage, etc. We got the assets back, and the assets were fantastic, but they had no driveways. They had like a water feature in front of the garage door and things all over the lawn because the team in China wasn't used to American culture. They didn't realize there's a driveway that needs to come. People have garages. So it was an early learning that the assets were great, but they didn't work for us because we hadn't thought about the cultural differences and what people on our team are used to and listed those out. So we changed things up. I think we made them watch lots of episodes of Friends for a while. Like, okay, here are a few shows you should watch to get to know about US culture. Another time we went out to a partner in Eastern Europe, and one of the DDs stood in a group, and in Canada they were used to just calling people out and saying, "You've done a fantastic job, let's all give a clap for whoever it is." And they did this, this is an European developer, and everyone just stayed quiet. And then afterwards, that person went over to the DD. I was like, I didn't appreciate that. That was actually demotivating because in this culture, you thank everybody. You don't call out individuals. It's always a team effort, a group effort. So we went through a lot of these pitfalls in building these relationships with partners and working things out. So those are my top two. Do your due diligence. Make sure you know who you're working with and that you can build strong relationships with them. And then secondly, understand the cultural differences and what you should be providing to really have a successful engagement.
Definitely. Thomas, you want to
Thank you.
take it from there, especially like, once you've gotten past the due diligence and you've hopefully met with the potential partner, talked to them about the requirements of the project. Once it gets started, that can be like a whole nother set of challenges. So
So my background is I used to be an engineer. No longer allowed to code. It's a liability for the company if I do. But engineering and production is my background, and then as we've grown the company, that's kind of been the shape of the services along with QA that we provide. And so a lot of our hiccups are going to be based around sort of like, yes, onboarding, when you're onboarding with a partner from a technical side and from a production side. Technical onboarding, right, it's, getting access to the right accounts, getting the permissions set up, but we've worked with a lot of indie partners or like married couples who've been making games for like 5 years together, and then they're ready to bring it to Nintendo Switch. And we're like, cool, can you add us to source control? And they're like, what's source control? And so we're teaching our partners like, okay, we'll help you set it up on GitHub. We're going to get source control set up so then you can add us to it, and then now we can start, committing code together. And then production rituals, also like onboarding through like the hiccups of different production styles and communication styles. So like, do you want to meet every week? Do you just communicate over Slack? There's a few more. There's just so many, and I'm trying to narrow it down.
Take your time.
Thank you.
It really is. Like, it is so hard to narrow down learnings for this kind of thing.
Yeah. And then there's two more. Ambiguous expectations. So like you say, port it to Switch, or bring in some engineers who are going to work on building out online multiplayer. But like understanding like, okay, that meant if it's online multiplayer, you're going to have like lobbies and sessions, but also synchronization of game objects. And so like all this engineering work goes into it. And then they're like, well, what about join in progress or host migration? It's like, well, we never established that in the scope. And speaking of scope, if production timelines that you plan for versus what happens in reality and how your co-dev partner can come along with you, if you extend your development schedule, then obviously your budget probably is going to have to adapt with that. But also if your co-dev partner is late, how do you adapt to that? Like how do you work together? And then finally touching on the cultural side of things, as a co-dev studio where we're based in Japan, the production processes with somebody in Japan or a studio in Japan, completely different from the way that we work here in the West. And I think I touched earlier, like how your production processes and what you're expecting, you learn it as you go, and you can kind of recognize where you might have to adapt or where they're supposed to adapt. But just anticipating that there are going to be those kind of problems will help a lot to mitigate.
Thank you. So kind of to expand on the working with different cultures around the world, I want to talk a little bit about the ethical side of external development. It's really, really important to make sure, of course, that people are treated fairly. And unfortunately, there have been some exploitative practices in the past, and I should say not just in the past. That still happens today, and so I think it's really an important thing to end on, to talk about how can you evaluate the right fit, not just because especially if you are a small team, you have a really minimal budget, you probably need to go to a lower cost center, and that's absolutely fine because there's really, really talented studios out there in places that cost a lot less. There are also some really important ethical considerations to keep in mind beyond just cost. And so I just want to talk a little bit more about kind of evaluating how do you evaluate the right fit in a way that is looking beyond just the cost measures. And Lauren, you want to start?
Thanks for the question. It's an important one. Gosh, where to begin with this? I think we've talked a lot about this concept of treating your external dev partner like an extension of your team. And that's easy to say in theory. In practice, what does that actually mean, right? And what that means is, what do you do when the shit hits the fan? It's real easy to treat people like humans when everything's hunky-dory. We're all holding hands and happy and producing high-quality art that everybody loves. What happens when your game gets canceled? What happens when you run out of capital? These are the things that you need to think about. I would advise, even before you engage with a partner, do a pre-mortem. If you run a studio, do a pre-mortem with your leads. Hey, we want to start doing external dev. Let's answer these questions now, because you don't want to answer those questions in the middle of, crisis. And that's a surefire way when you're under pressure to start dehumanizing. And that's, I think, where I've seen that happen is a project's canceled. You let the external dev partner know the next day, sorry, we can't pay you anymore. And they're reliant on you. And then all of a sudden, we've seen this happen. There was a brilliant art partner that in India, brilliant art, I don't know if I can say their name, but they went under after 50 years, 100 years maybe it was 100 years of being in existence. Literally, they worked on, now I'm going to give them away, but they worked on The Wizard of Oz. What? This team was phenomenal and worked on some of the best and most high caliber art at EA. P.S. EA was not the development company that caused this to happen, but that team was embedded and working on a project that got canceled, and within, I don't know, it was so dramatic. It was literally within weeks, that company went under. So it was devastating to the broader industry because all these other AAA game studios were dependent on that same partner. So it's just understanding the human aspect of it, being kind, knowing what you're gonna do. Hopefully you're not ever in crisis mode, but look, this is game development, it happens. So planning for the worst case scenario and being fair to your partners. We talked a little bit about budget, but also don't undercut your partners. Don't negotiate for every last penny, right? Do your research, understand the fair market cost for labor. There is so much information out there. Hell, you can use Gemini Deep Research nowadays to do this for you. If you really want to nerd out, you can get some really great understanding of what the market comps are for the region that you're doing business with. And don't lead with a price tag that's going to be insulting, right? Make sure you do your homework. There's a couple things that stand out.
I'm not sure whether it was with Lauren that her and I went out to a company in the Philippines, and they were doing amazing work at the time. And then we sat down, we've got something to show you. And they pulled up this sheet, and it was all the EA projects, and they had made zero negative amounts on all the EA projects, and they showed us the others. And we didn't realize that we were pushing hard on the rates, and we didn't realize they were never open to us because they just wanted to work on amazing projects and work on this IP. And I was like, it's okay, the other projects are making us money. The team's really motivated because they're getting to work on Need for Speed and The Sims and all these amazing projects. Instantly, we changed that and we increased their rates so that they were in a great place and healthy. And that's where it's important to build these relationships so these leaders, the owners of these companies are open with you. And then just yourself, you may be under pressure in your studio to get the lowest rates possible, but they need to be able to afford to invest in software. Otherwise, they're going to go and get illegal copies of the software. They need to invest in their people. Then they'll put the best people on the project that they have versus saying, you know what, we can't afford to keep this A star. We're going to put them on another project and give them the C team because their rates are so low. So from an ethical point of view, it's really important to understand kind of their costs and not push them to the absolute bottom or kind of underneath it.
Okay, what's the three things you're always balancing? Time, quality, and cost? So you only choose two? You can have all three. You just have to be, again, the right partnership. You really value the human connection and how you're treating people.
It is really, it really does all come back to the partnership piece, which is, you know, what you, the thing that you led with, Jason. It really is all about that. It's not just about getting the work done and, you know, cutting costs. It's a very human, it's a very human experience. I mean, that is truly why I am so passionate about external development and why I do what I do, because it is, in my opinion, like the most human-centric part of, well, one of the most human-centric parts of game development. It really is about finding ways to work together effectively, you know, across the globe. But Teresa, I really want to hear from you. I know this is something that you're really passionate about too, and you know, how can developers be good partners? And yeah.
So I've been in the nuts and bolts side of the game industry since the 90s, and I think it's just beautiful. It is a beautiful industry full of so many amazing people that make amazing things together. And I joined the staffing industry several years ago, and it is very different. And a lot of people know a lot of things about staffing and business and finance and what they really need to know for staffing, but they may not know a lot about the game industry. And we know a lot about the game industry and the people in it. And so I've done 120-hour work weeks. I've done been on so many projects that I wasn't even credited on while doing that over time. And when it comes to the ethics of all of that, just be honest with your partners. Be honest about your budget. And not everybody is doing this for money. But when you are undervalued in an external development position, that credit, that money, that time, like those things, they're pulling all of that from you. And if you are valued and you find a partner that values you in that way, hold on to them, keep them. Because on the contrary side, if someone is writing a contract to kind of squeeze that person and take all of their money and take advantage of their passion, they probably won't use that person anymore. They'll try to find a way out, and I'm just really proud of how the game industry is moving towards a different direction and working together like an extension of the team for all of these types of roles.
Thank you so much, Teresa. I think we've got a few minutes for some Q&A. All right.
Hello. I was wondering if you had any tips for making sure you're not micromanaging any of your relationships that you have, or making sure you're also not showing up at the end and just seeing the finished product.
Lauren, you look like you want to answer this.
I mean, it depends on what you're trying to get out of the partnership. I will say, some external dev engagements do require a high level of specification, right? So let's be clear about the difference between providing really robust, detailed requirements so that your partner can do their job and do it well and do it to your expectation, right? Versus micromanaging, which is the negative side of that, which probably means that you didn't provide enough detailed requirements and set expectations up front, right? Micromanaging comes from a place of ambiguity. It comes from a place of risk aversion, and I'm going to say it again, the shit's hitting the fan, so I'm going to overcompensate by micromanaging. You don't have to do that if you've set things up in a way that are sustainable and that everybody's clear on the goaling in the first place.
I think you could also have triage, daily meetings toward the end of the project, or sprints, and see how everyone's doing once a week.
Yeah, I think really important is a very detailed creative brief in the beginning. So you detail basically everything that needs to be created, and then you set milestones for check-ins. Because then you don't wait until the end. You can say, okay, we're going to check in at week 3, or week 5, or week 6, and this is what we want to see. And then just wait for those milestones. Because a lot of these partners don't like to be micromanaged because they feel devalued as a partner. They want to have some creative control. And there's some amazing artists at these companies. So it's great to just give them a little bit of kind of creative control and see what they come up with. And I think you'll be really surprised. But when you micromanage them, you don't get the best out of them.
Two points to add. This is all great feedback. 2 points to add is, you're building trust over time, so having these deliverables where you can see, and like I said, they will miss some things, but you give the feedback, can they respond to it, and they grow. And the second thing is that knowing the difference between glass balls and rubber balls, what can land and someone else will go pick it up versus what's going to break. Just knowing really where to draw the line.
Oh,
Really good point.
Also
Just
give
real quick, because I want to make sure other people have time, but if you want to add.
I was going to say a small project first, then larger ones.
Yeah, starting small, definitely. I would love for you to be able to, I'm sorry.
How do you manage or prevent crunch between internal and external studios?
Crunch? Did you say crunch? Well, you plan ahead, having a good idea of what your milestones are, your deliverables are, the success, and then going back from there and breaking down your stuff at the end toward the beginning. That works in test. I don't know if it would work on other things, but planning ahead.
Yeah, good production processes, knowing ahead of time where things are going to get tight. And if you have a good relationship, start planning ahead early, noticing that's going to happen, and renegotiate if you need to, the reality of the timeline.
I'm going to go back to due diligence as well, because there are some studios that say we will never crunch. That's our culture at this studio. So even if the person working with us is the studio is crunching, we will not accept that. But then I went to one studio that had cots at the end of each desk and in the meeting rooms, and this music started playing and everybody went to sleep on their desks. And they had hacked the biorhythms of all the employees so they would work longer. And when the music played, they all got a 15, 20-minute break. They all went to sleep. And I was walking through at one point, it's why is everybody asleep? It's the middle of the day. It's well, that's how we work. So they work longer hours. And when there's crunch, they go into the meeting rooms, they roll out all the cuts, and they sleep. And so that studio was this is the way we work. This is what everybody expects. We're there for studios that are crunching. And that's how we've set up the culture. And everybody's okay with it. So if you crunch, it doesn't matter to us, that's okay. So I think to the due diligence of understanding, will the studio do that? Are they open to that? And then just being open and telling them in advance, there's going to be a difficult period coming. Are you okay with that?
Also checking in with your partner, right? Like, don't take it for granted that they're not crunching, because I've definitely worked with partners that all of a sudden, like midway through a project, they let us know that they've been crunching for months on end and they're like crying for mercy. And I'm like, really wish I knew that, right, in advance. So be upfront about that with your teams.
Thank you so much. You've been so patiently waiting in the front row here. I just want to make sure you get a chance.
To be fair, I've been in the last like 3 panels, and I've asked questions at each one of them. So I've gotten a lot of my time. Okay. I have 2 questions from 2 different standpoints. From an indie developer standpoint, working with an external development team for the first time or so, you guys mentioned a lot, particularly Jason and Thomas. You guys mentioned a lot of pitfalls, and how will we go about protecting ourselves from that? And one of the things that kind of concerns me more than anything else is like deprioritization of us because the team picks up bigger clients and then just kind of drops us off. You guys mentioned like, oh well, we're gonna give them our C team because this other client is paying us more or whatnot. How can you like go into those contracts or those arrangements protecting yourself?
We'd love to talk about this for hours. Just quickly, no contract is going to, it's almost impossible, I think, to like shape a contract so perfectly that it will protect both parties from like all the things that are going to go wrong. So the best thing that you have is, again, the relationship. If your production processes that you have to keep your employees like knowing how well they're doing, how they're performing, embed your co-development team in those same production rituals. They don't have to be like employees, but if they are at the stand-ups, if they're on the same sprints, or at least your production team and their production team are building a close relationship, your visibility on how they're doing will help you so much. And then you can very quickly, when things start to feel a little off, talk about it early. Don't wait for it to be like shit hit the fan. It's like, actually, you can give feedback. Co-dev teams want feedback. They want to be good partners, so they want to know how they're doing, and you give that feedback early, it'll help a lot.
I think you can also put in the contract if they wanted to end the partnership, a buyout, or just leave no room for interpretation when you do write your deliverables.
Okay.
I think your first question was, how as indie developers do you avoid the pitfalls rather than going through them all like I did? Right now, the external development community is fantastic. It's vibrant and everyone's open to sharing. 14 years ago, when I started with external development, everybody was like, I'm not going to talk to them, they're a competitor. Now there's a lot of events. At Mix, there's an external development track. There's the External Development Summit next week in Vancouver. And at all those events, people are open to sharing. They're actually sharing the best practices. The talks are online. There's podcasts on this topic. So I would say you can message people at other companies and say, okay, what should I avoid? And ask advice. Go to these events and talk to people. And I think you'll find that the external development community is very giving and willing to share the knowledge. And a lot of that knowledge is out there in videos and written up in different reports as well.
All right. Well, on the other side of the coin, because you mentioned ethics, and that's a big thing for me. I'm thinking about like some of the most I guess, valuable skills that external development teams can bring in. How do you think AI and automation is influencing that, like in terms of like?
I think that more people are going to be using it as a tool, and hopefully not to, as their creation, but as a tool. And I think that technology is going to, I don't know. I don't know what the future holds, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be awesome, like as far as video games and the capabilities that we're about to see.
It's got to be explicit, though. If that's not for you, if you don't want AI, some people don't, right? Like I've heard from indies here that like, I don't want to use AI at all. Be upfront about that, because your external partners are looking for ways to scale what they do, and they are using AI. The XDS, research shows that they are, but just be explicit. We don't want you to use AI. It reminds me of like when I was in social gaming, there was this whole like hullabaloo about reference imagery. We were doing a lot of like 2D graphics, and like we would give them reference art, and then they would just like do a nice paint over of the reference art, and then we're like, shit, that's infringing on like copyrighted material. You can't do that, right? So like, don't expect your partner to read your mind. Just tell them if you don't want them to use it, and then build in some checks and balances.
I would say that we've had 3 different kinds of contracts, and I will clarify, I'm an engineering team that says no art AI at all, but from an engineering side, we've had partners who are very explicit, no AI at all allowed in any work that you're turning in. Second one is like, if you're gonna use AI for like up-resing textures or like coding or something like that, then get approval ahead of time. And then the third one, we have a client who is like, use Claude, use whatever the one that embeds Cursor. So Cursor and Claude, and like embed it and like use it the right code. We want to test it. They're very interested in from the technical aspect to grow from it. You decide, like she said, you get to just put it in the contract and say what you approve or don't approve.
I think there was a question in the center here.
I
To time.
am being told we are at time. Sorry, everybody didn't have a chance to ask questions. As you can see, there's so much to talk about here, and I personally want to be open to. I'm happy to answer questions after this. Also, like always open to if you want to reach out and just have a conversation. I could nerd out about this stuff for a very long time. So, yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.